Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to new video. In the yesterday's discussion, we have discussed about factors that have enabled the globalization. Means those factors which played important role in this rapid integration between different countries. So first we have seen transportation. So technology in transportation. Transportation nowadays we know that became cheaper as well as faster compared to few decades ago. Transportation today became cheaper, at the same time even faster, more efficient. That is the first reason, first factors we have seen. Second one, we have seen technology in information and communication, IT and communication technology. And we know that suddenly within a short period of time, that evolution we know, from telegraph, telephone to that cellular phone, cordless phone, cellular phone, and nowadays smartphones. And at the same time that internet as well, computer and internet. So all those factors played important role in enabling globalization throughout the world, not only in context of India, but throughout the world. And yes, of course, effects in India we can observe as well. As we have seen one example of Chinese toys. Let's think about one more thing here. Import of Chinese toys in India. Suppose the Indian government was taxed on import toys. We have seen, right? I told you a story about childhood of mine, and especially in context of toys, were difficult to get toys that time. Indian toys available and those typical types of toys. But due to arrival of Chinese toys in India, that toys market in India had changed rapidly. Lots of different types of attractive toys available in Indian market even today, and that also at very reasonable rate, at cheap rate. Right now, there is one twist here. What if government restrict import of Chinese goods, import of Chinese toys? How can we stop? If government put restriction, then of course Chinese government would oppose it. So there is a way to restrict. Tax, import tax, what we call duties. Sometimes we call them import duties. So there is a way, tax. So those who wish to import these toys would have to pay tax on it. Because of tax, buyer will have to pay higher. Those who import, they would have to pay tax. And of course, they wouldn't pay tax from their own pocket, from their own bank account. Of course, they would charge to their customers. So ultimately, customers, consumers, those who are final user, they have to pay more for toys. So ultimately, price of toys have increased. And if price increase, then people would think about other option, that means local Indian toys. So Chinese toys will no longer be as cheap in Indian market, and import from China will automatically reduce. So Indian toy maker will get benefit. So this is the barrier. This is called barrier, restriction, barrier, and this is trade barrier. Tax on import is an example of trade barrier. It is called barrier. Why we call it barrier? You know that barrier to control traffic or to control people, to regulate access to somewhere. That is called barrier. So here barrier, because government can use these trade barriers, those trade taxes, to regulate trade. Means government wants that what things to be import or what to be export, right? And quantity of those things means that increase or decrease in import and export. That is called regulation of trade. The government wants control on it. what to be import and what to be export, increase and decrease in foreign trade, import and export. So here government decide what kind of goods and how much of each should come into country. Right, this is called trade regulation. Here foreign trade regulation. So government can use trade barrier to increase or decrease. That means regulate foreign trade, to regulate foreign trade and decide what kind of goods and how much of it should come into the country. Right? So to gain control over it, government uses trade barriers. Now our topic, the third factor is liberalization. First two factors we have seen. Now third factor is liberalization. So liberalization of foreign trade and foreign investment policies. So government gradually became liberal. Government allowed foreign trade as well as foreign investment. So let's try to understand this liberalization in detail. So let me discuss with you about economy of India at the time of independence. We know that British rule ruined the Indian economy entirely. Businesses collapsed, artisans, craft persons, those who were famous before, now no longer existed. Indian market entirely controlled by the British. Now when British left, they left nothing in India in economic perception. So economy of India was entirely broken, was collapsed, like building collapsed, so economy of India at that time collapsed. Now our leaders had to build a new economy. So the Indian government after independence had put some barriers on foreign trade and foreign investment because all the economy, all the wealth taken away by British. Now the government wanted Indian economy back. They wanted that Indian industries flourish in India. So to control on foreign goods and foreign investment, they put trade barriers and barriers on foreign investment in India after independence. So this was considered necessary to protect the producers within the country from foreign competition. Why trade barriers? Why barriers on foreign investment? Why government wanted to gain control over it? Because government considered necessary to give protection to Indian traders, protection to Indian manufacturers. Because Indian industries were like kid, child, baby, right? So we know that protection to infant, protection to children is required, right, from outer factors. As children, that their parents protect them from various factors. So those industries were infant, some were children, right? So they were needed protection from foreign tax, from foreign companies. So government provided them protection through barriers. So government put barriers on foreign trade and foreign investment after independence. So industries were just coming up in 1950s and 1960s, and competition from foreign imports that stage would not have allowed these industries to come up. Thus India allowed import, but which import? Import of necessary things. So industries were came up that time, and newly established industries couldn't compete with the foreign industries, foreign multinational corporations. Those were already wealthier, those were already well set in the international market. So to provide protection from the multinational corporations, government kept some trade barriers. But some imports were allowed that time because for the newly growing industries, machines were required. Some raw materials also required. So machineries, fertilizers, raw materials, some raw materials like petroleum, etc. So those imports were allowed that time. Imports were allowed, but this only. Automobile imports were difficult, had to pay huge taxes. Then after consumer products especially, personal care and consumer products. So those imports were restricted because government wanted that Indian companies that become wealthier, they grow in the various sectors. So note that all that for developed countries, during the early stage of development, they have given protection to domestic producer through variety of means. So the India did. Now how long production was required? Because if I compare those industries with human, so I told you like industries were like infant, industries were like children, but infant, then after children, they need protection from their parents at certain age only, till adolescent period and till adult only. And after adult, we want our freedom. If we get freedom, certain freedom, then only we can develop ourselves. In my age, yes, when I was a child, my parents protected me. There were so many restrictions on me. Many restrictions were on me. Like to go out, I had to take permission. Lots of restrictions were on me. This I am talking about my own personal life. Right? But as I grew up, I became that an adult. So gradually those restrictions were removed. Now if I want to go foreign, I don't need to take permission from my parents. I just need to inform because I am now a responsible adult person. If my parents keep restriction on me even today, that is not a practical thing, right? No one would accept this, and it would harm my personal development as well, right? Because I need to take my decisions for my own life. Then only I can survive. Then only I can live in this world. So similar situation for the industries as well. So when government realized that now trade barriers and protections are no longer required for the industries, because industries need to be grow up and they should ready to compete with different multinational companies, and they should enter in the international market. So starting around 1991, some far-reaching changes in policy were made in India. The government decided that the time had come for Indian producers to compete with producers around the globe. And one famous person played an important role in this decision. There is no one other than our former Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. He made the decision. He decided to become liberal on this foreign trade. That is called liberalization. So those trades were gradually removed by him. Trade barriers on foreign trade and foreign investment gradually removed by the government after 1991. So this policy is called policy of liberalization. So it felt that competition would improve the performance of producers within the country, since they would have to improve their quality as well as their efficiency. This decision was supported by some powerful international organizations as well. More, these barriers on foreign trade and foreign investment were removed to large extent gradually. This meant that goods could be imported and exported easily, and also foreign companies could set up factories and offices in India after adoption of liberalization policy. So, what is liberalization policy? Removing barriers, means restrictions set up by the government, is what is known as liberalization. So those restrictions were there, restrictions which were set up by government, and removal of those restrictions or barrier is called liberalization. With the liberalization of trade, businesses were allowed to make decisions freely because their foreign trades were under control of government through trade barriers. Now those barriers removed, so those traders and entrepreneurs became free. Now they can make their own decisions freely. More, the government imposes much less restriction than before, and it is therefore said to be more liberal. So this is how government became liberal. Yet there are still some restrictions are there in certain sector. For an example, just for your information, I am sharing. Automobile sector is still under trade restrictions. So if I want to import a car from foreign country, definitely I can, but I have to pay that huge import duty and excise duty, which is almost equivalent to 200%, means double price of that vehicle. So if you want to import a motorcycle, you have to pay almost double price as taxes to the government. So that motorcycle costs 2 times higher than its original price. So rarely people prefer to import. Those who are extremely rich, they only can import. Other than them, no one would prefer to import. And this how government provides protection to automobile industry. Because we know that in foreign countries cars are cheaper compared to India. So we can go there and if purchase car, that would be easier for us. Similar restriction on gold, silver, and many other things as well. On electronics goods as well. Certain electronic goods are only allowed to import. Other than that, we have to pay duties. So these are called trade restrictions. And removal of this restriction is called policy of liberalization. So this is about liberalization, and next video we will talk about some one important international organization, WTO, World Trade Organization. Thank you so much for watching video. Stay